All right, so get this. Today, we're going deep on building a raft.
Ooh, sounds intense.
For survival, no less.
Yeah.
Not just some, lazy river kind of thing,
Yeah.
but one you could actually depend on if you're stuck needing to get across some serious water.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
We're talking survival guides, forum threads from folks who've actually built these things,
Yeah.
even a blog post about kids making nature boats, which, believe it or not, is more relevant than you'd think.
I'm sensing a theme here.
And to help us untangle all this, we've got, our expert whose brain is basically like
Oh, stop. You're making me blush.
a dot connecting, insight extracting machine.
All right, you got me.
So by the end of this deep dive, you'll basically have a crash course in raft building. Not just the basics, but
Hit me with those insider tips.
the tricks that could actually make all the difference out there, when it matters.
Life or death stuff. Got it.
Now, every single source we dug into, they all stress this. Picking the right materials. It's like...
Because it's not just grabbing any old log, right?
Exactly. You'd think any log would float, but it's way more complex than that.
It really is. The choice of materials impacts how the raft will handle, like currents, for example.
Huh. So lighter woods might make it easier to maneuver?
Yeah, like cedar, maybe even portable for short distances.
So strategy is key. It's not just about sinking or floating.
Right on. And, cedar, pine, spruce, those keep popping up as the favorites.
The all-stars of raft building. I never would have guessed.
Well, pine's easy to find, easy to work with, great for a quick build.
That makes sense.
But spruce, it's got that balance of strength and buoyancy, so if your raft needs to carry more weight or face rougher waters.
Spruce it.
Exactly.
Okay, and this totally blew my mind. Removing bark is a must.
Absolutely. Most folks think it's just to prevent rot, which is true, but
There's more to it.
big time. Without the bark, you can bind the logs way tighter, like really snug.
Makes it sturdier, I guess.
Totally. Keeps water out, adds to that whole structural integrity thing.
So debarked logs, check. Now how do we actually hold them together?
Here's where it gets fun. Vines, willow branches.
Wait, seriously?
Oh yeah, even your shoelaces if you're desperate.
Talk about resourcefulness.
It's a testament to human ingenuity throughout history, like the ancient Egyptians using reeds for their boats. Shows we can be resourceful even in a crisis.
But if you've got the option, paracord or synthetic rope is the way to go, right?
Hands down. That strength, that resistance to rot, nothing beats it. But it's not just about the rope itself.
Because I was going to say, tying knots, how hard can it be?
There's technique involved. It's about understanding lashing, distributing stress across multiple points so the raft doesn't flex or break apart.
So like spreading the pressure out, making it stronger overall.
Precisely. Some sources even recommend specific knots, like a square lashing or a diagonal lashing, the ones known for strength and stability in boat building.
All right, this is getting seriously complex, like we're building a floating fortress here.
You got to be prepared.
Okay, so let's get those logs laid out. Thickest, most buoyant at the base, right?
You got it. Solid base equals a stable platform, which is crucial because if your base is wobbly, any additional structures you build, like a shelter or storage, won't last.
Makes sense. I've also seen designs with shorter logs lashed across the base, like a grid.
That's all about weight distribution, like cross beams in a bridge, preventing overload and stabilizing the raft, especially in rough water.
So that's how you ride a wave instead of capsizing, huh?
Exactly.
Now, speaking of real-world stuff, remember that forum thread where that guy was all about using just 2 barrels and a pallet?
Oh yeah, almost a disaster waiting to happen.
Right. He thought buoyancy was enough, but those 2 barrels together wouldn't have the stability or weight distribution needed for a real raft.
Like trying to balance on a seesaw with someone twice your size.
And then someone pointed out he'd need to cover that pallet so his feet wouldn't slip through.
Comfort isn't just about being cozy out there. A twisted ankle or a slip overboard could be bad news, so that attention to detail is smart.
Safety first, even on a raft. Okay, so we've got logs down, but what about those who think outside the box?
You mean the plastic barrel sealed container crowd?
Yeah, even using polystyrene blocks from construction sites, some were suggesting.
It's where DIY gets really interesting. These can be great for buoyancy, especially if your logs get waterlogged.
Like little unsinkable helpers.
Right, and then there was that whole debate about PVC pipes and plastic bottles for flotation.
Oh, yeah, on that boat design forum, right? Some loved it, others weren't so sure.
And they had a point. While those materials can work, you got to think about their intended purpose. They're generally for short-term use, not the constant exposure of a real survival situation.
So not all innovation is created equal.
Exactly.
What I found really cool was the idea of a hybrid raft, like sturdy logs for the core, but then a section built with plastic and netting for, get this, growing food.
A floating garden, how ingenious is that? Blends practicality with, dare I say, optimism.
Right. It's not just surviving, it's thriving.
And it raises the question for you listening. What matters most to you in a survival scenario? What would your raft look like?
Good question. Okay, so we've got the foundation, but surviving's more than staying afloat, right? Shelter, comfort, got to factor that in.
And that's where that blog post about kids building nature boats comes in.
Thimble and twig, right. I loved that one.
It reminds us that even in survival mode, there's room for creativity, for a little bit of fun.
Keeping spirits up is important, even when things are rough. Desert island survival is big on finding natural shelters, like caves or overhangs.
And even on a raft, a windbreak or a sunshade can be a game changer.
Using what nature provides? Smart.
It is. But here's a thought. Even in survival mode, comfort isn't just a luxury. A good night's sleep, protection from the elements, those things impact your mental state, your ability to think straight, make good decisions.
So it's psychological shelter too, not just physical.
Exactly.
Makes sense. But shelter won't help much if you're dying of thirst, right? Water's got to be the top priority.
Absolutely. And finding safe drinking water on a deserted island, well, that's a challenge in itself.
Desert island survival really emphasized that with the rule of threes.
Right. Water trumps even food when it comes to urgency.
And it's not just finding it, it's making sure it's safe to drink. Stagnant water can be a breeding ground for all sorts of nasty stuff.
You need to know how to purify it. Some of the sources detailed some seriously clever methods, like using plastic sheets to build solar stills, or even purifying water in bottles with fire.
Whoa, that's next level ingenuity.
It is. And it reminds us that knowledge is power, especially in a crisis.
Okay, so we've got shelter, water. What about food? I'm picturing fish traps, spears, the whole Survivor Man vibe.
The ocean's your supermarket in this scenario.
Makes sense.
Fish traps are great for passive gathering, and a simple spear can be surprisingly effective. It's all about utilizing what you've got.
And once again, coconuts prove their worth. Hydration, calories, even the shells can be used as tools.
Nature's multi-tool, I tell you.
Absolutely. Desert island survival also mentioned foraging for edible plants.
But with a big emphasis on caution, of course.
Yeah, one wrong bite and your survival story takes a dark turn.
Foraging requires knowledge and respect. If you're not sure, sticking to safe bets like coconuts is probably wiser.
Okay, so we've got shelter, water, food, hopefully a decent stockpile of coconuts.
Sounds like a feast.
But what if that rescue boat is taking its sweet time? We need to signal for help.
Signaling is about more than just being found. It's an act of defiance against that feeling of helplessness.
It's like saying, hey, I'm here, I'm fighting, I'm not giving up.
Exactly. And Desert Island Survival had a whole bunch of techniques. SOS messages on the beach, smoke signals, even using mirrors to reflect sunlight.
Now that's thinking outside the box.
Think about the psychological impact of those actions, too. Every signal you send is a small victory, a morale boost that keeps your spirits up and your mind focused on survival.
You know, talking about all this, I just realized something. We've covered building the raft, but how do you even launch the thing? Getting a fully built raft into the water can't be easy.
It's often overlooked, but it's a huge part of the process. Launching a large raft is a logistical challenge. You need to plan carefully and ideally have a team.
Oh, I see what you mean.
You know, some of those forum stories really highlight that. One user talked about using logs as rollers to move their raft to the water, like the ancient Egyptians moving those massive stones.
Wow, talk about ingenuity.
Right. And it shows the importance of simple mechanics and teamwork. A lone survivor might struggle with a heavy raft, but a group working together can do it.
It's a good reminder that even in a crisis, we're not meant to go it alone.
Exactly. And while we're on that topic, another point many sources emphasize is buoyancy testing before you set sail.
I can see how that'd be easy to forget in the heat of the moment.
Testing it in shallow water is essential. You can find weak points or areas that need reinforcement before venturing into deeper water.
Prevention is better than cure, right?
Exactly. And it helps to distribute the weight evenly during the test, simulating real-world conditions with people and supplies on board.
Makes sense. So, raft built, tested, ready to go. But how do we make sure it holds up out there in the open water?
That's where the finer points of construction matter. Things like prioritizing DRY materials for bindings, because wet vines or bark weaken the whole structure.
Ah, so it's not just about the type of material, but its condition too.
Right. And multiple layers of binding are a must, especially at stress points. It's like the old saying, measure twice, cut once, but for rafts.
So it's not just knots, it's meticulous craftsmanship.
Exactly. It's about minimizing risk and maximizing your chances of success. It's about building not just a raft, but a safety net.
And this whole process, it's about so much more than technical skills, isn't it? It's problem solving, adaptability, that whole MacGyver thing.
It is, and that's what's so fascinating about survival. It's a testament to human ingenuity, our ability to think creatively and find solutions even in the toughest situations.
We're capable of a lot more than we give ourselves credit for.
Absolutely. So all this talk about rafts and survival, it's got me thinking, what if we were in that situation? If you could only choose 3 items to take to a deserted island for raft building, what would they be?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Let's see, okay, I'm on the edge of my seat here. What did you pick as your top 3 must-haves for desert island raft building?
Well, after much deliberation, my first choice is, drumroll please, a high-quality axe.
An axe, huh? Going full lumberjack, I see.
Think of it less as lumberjack, more like a multi-tool with some serious power behind it. Felling trees, shaping logs, notching for binding, even digging if you have to. An axe, it's basically your best friend out there.
I mean, yeah, when you put it like that, but what about putting the raft together? Any picks for that?
Pick number 2 has you covered. A large roll of heavy-duty, weather-resistant tarp.
A tarp. So we're building a floating fort now.
Shelter's important, sure, but think bigger. A tarp can be rigged as a sail, catch rainwater, even signal for help if you can spread it out on the beach. It's all about adapting to the situation.
Okay, you're really thinking strategically here. I'm impressed. Now, the big reveal. What's the final item?
This one might seem a bit out of left field, but a well-stocked first aid kit is a must.
Oh, right. I hadn't thought of that. Out in the elements, cuts, scrapes, even sunburn, bound to happen.
Exactly, and those little things can turn serious fast if they get infected. A good first aid kit keeps you healthy and functioning, which means better decisions, higher spirits, the whole package.
Healthy body, healthy mind, right? Makes sense. But let's get back to the raft itself. We talked about those natural binding techniques, but how do you make sure they're actually strong enough, for the long haul?
It's understanding the forces involved and using the right techniques. Like a square lashing, that's great for side-by-side logs, while a diagonal lashing, that's your go-to for securing crossbeams.
Different strokes for different folks.
Exactly. And multiple layers of binding, that's key, especially at those high-stress points.
Like reinforcing the weak spot so it doesn't all fall apart.
You got it. Another tip from those seasoned raft builders. Make sure your binding materials are bone dry. Wet vines or bark, they weaken fast, and that can compromise the whole structure.
So condition matters just as much as material, huh?
It's like building a house. You wouldn't use damp wood, would you? Same principle applies here.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Okay, we've covered the physical build, but being stranded, that can't be easy mentally. How do you deal with that feeling of isolation, the uncertainty?
Mental resilience, that's the key. And honestly, building the raft, that plays a huge part. It's not just escape. It's about taking control, focusing on a tangible goal, something that gives you purpose, hope.
So it's like a mental shift from feeling like a victim to like an active participant in your own rescue.
Exactly. Every step, from gathering materials to that final lashing, it's a small victory, a reminder that you're capable, you're resilient.
A boost to the morale, I like it.
And that, believe me, can make all the difference.
So the raft becomes a symbol, almost like a physical manifestation of that will to survive.
Exactly. It's saying, I'm not just waiting around, I'm doing something, I'm fighting for this.
Action over inaction, gotta love it. Now, raft built, launched, all good, but we need to know where we're going, right? Navigation? How do we even begin to tackle that?
This is where some basic celestial navigation comes in handy. Our ancestors, they knew their stars, and those skills are invaluable out there.
Wait, are you saying we need to become astronomers to survive now?
Not expert level, but knowing how to use the stars for guidance can be life-saving. Polaris, the North Star, points you north. And in the Southern Hemisphere, the Southern Cross does the same for south.
Okay, that's kind of cool. I can see it now. But what if it's cloudy or we're just clueless about constellations?
No worry, there are other tricks. Ocean currents, wind patterns, even bird flight paths, they all offer clues about where you are, where land might be.
Like becoming one with nature? Letting it guide you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But even with top-notch navigation, storms, rough seas, they're a reality. How do we prepare for that?
Yeah, good point. No amount of stargazing will help if we get capsized.
It comes back to raft design. A low center of gravity helps prevent that, and a secure shelter protects you from wind and rain. Remember that tarp? It could be rigged as a sail, turning the wind to your advantage.
Using the elements to your benefit? Smart thinking.
It's all about adapting, being resourceful. And that brings us back to mental strength. Staying calm, thinking clearly, those are just as vital as any physical skill.
It's the mental game that often gets overlooked.
Right. It's about having the toughness to weather the storm, both literally and figuratively. From all these sources we explored, is there one piece of advice that really stuck with you? Something every aspiring raft builder should remember?
Yeah, what's the golden nugget of wisdom? The one takeaway?
It's tough to choose just one. But I'd say never underestimate the power of hope.
Hope. But that's so, I don't know, abstract, isn't it?
It might seem that way, but hope, it's the fuel that keeps you going when things look bleak. It's believing that even when you're stranded, rescue is possible.
So it's not just building a raft, it's building that belief in yourself, your ability to survive, the chance of things getting better.
Exactly. Hope is what ignites resilience. It drives you to keep signaling, keep searching for land, keep believing that even out there, you're not alone.
That's actually really powerful. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, but I'm realizing there's one aspect we haven't touched on. Securing your precious cargo. After all, supplies, tools, coconuts, they're no good at the bottom of the ocean.
You're right. It's easy to overlook that amidst all the excitement of building the raft itself. But securing your cargo, that's essential for a successful journey.
So how do we approach that? Elaborate lashings, waterproof containers, what's the strategy? So how do we approach that? Elaborate lashings, waterproof containers, what's the strategy?
It starts with a bit of planning, really. Thinking about what you'll be carrying, how to spread the weight out evenly.
Balance is key, got it.
Exactly. A well-balanced raft is a stable raft. You don't want to be top-heavy, especially in rough seas.
So coconuts evenly distributed, check. But what about things you need quick access to? First aid kit, that axe we talked about.
That's where designated compartments come in handy. You can use sturdy branches lashed together, kind of like a crate or a basket on the raft.
Raft furniture, I like it.
And yeah, waterproof bags or containers are essential. Keep those supplies dry.
Makes sense. I was thinking heavy-duty plastic bags, or those dry bags kayakers use. Would those work?
Absolutely. Anything that keeps the water out, that's the goal. I've even seen some designs that have lashing points built right into the raft's structure.
Oh, so like tie-down straps, but integrated.
Exactly. Adds that extra level of security. And remember, with lashing, more is more. Multiple contact points, strong knots, make sure everything's snug as a bug in a rug.
So basically, create a web of ropes holding everything in place.
Yeah, you could say that. It made me think of those huge fishing nets they use on boats.
Ooh, could you use something like that on a raft?
I don't see why not. It could be great for catching fish, scooping up debris for building, even as a barrier around the raft so smaller things don't fall off.
Multi-purpose raft net, I love it. But we can't get too carried away, can we? Weight limitations are a real concern.
Oh, absolutely. Overloading the raft is a big no-no.
Yeah.
You got to be realistic about what you can carry, prioritize the essentials, be willing to leave things behind.
It's like packing for a camping trip, but with, way higher stakes.
Exactly. Speaking of stakes, we haven't talked about anchoring. Would you even need that on a raft?
Good point. I mean, if you're just drifting, maybe not, but...
It depends on your situation. If you're near a reef, a sheltered cove, anchoring can prevent you from drifting into danger.
I'm picturing that scene from Castaway, Tom Hanks desperately trying to anchor near that island.
Right. But what kind of anchor would you even USE on a raft?
That's what I was thinking. It's not like you've got a metal one just lying around.
You got to get creative.
Yeah.
A heavy rock, a bag filled with sand, even a sturdy branch with a hooked end.
MacGyver strikes again. It's amazing what you can do with a bit of ingenuity. Really taps into that survival instinct,
Absolutely. This whole process, it's not just about the skills, it's about that human spirit, that resilience, the ability to adapt and overcome.
It's inspiring, really.
It is. Building a raft, it's a testament to human ingenuity, our ability to innovate and find solutions, even when it seems impossible.
It's that belief that even when things are tough, there's a way forward.
And that way forward, it's paved with knowledge, preparation, and never giving up hope.
And that's what we've tried to do in this deep dive, give you the knowledge, the inspiration to not just survive, but thrive no matter what.
It's about recognizing that these skills, these strategies, they apply to everyday challenges too. Making tough decisions, weathering personal storms, finding creative solutions.
It's that inner strength, that resilience that sets us apart.
And never forgetting that most crucial element, hope. The belief that even when things are dark, there's always a chance for a brighter tomorrow.
So, as we wrap up, we'll leave you with this. Imagine you're sharing this raft building knowledge with someone who's feeling lost, discouraged. What's the one thing you'd tell them to rekindle that hope, that spark to keep going?
Wow, that's a great question to ponder. Really gets you thinking.
It does. Well, on that note, we'll leave you to contemplate that. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep that adventurous spirit alive. Until next time, happy rafting.